conversation series. I'm Leah Triplett Harrington. I'm assistant curator at Now and There, and I have the pleasure to be in conversation today with guest artist Stephanie Cardon, who you might remember as the creator of our 2018 project N+, which was on view at the Prudential Center a couple years ago. And our dedicated Now and There board member, founder, and CEO of U2B Skincare, Charla Jones. And we'll be discussing the question, how can art offer hope to artists and the public at this time? This program was created to really offer a supportive and proactive space for artists, cultural workers, cultural producers, community leaders, and the public to, in the face of physical distancing and public retreat. I'll say that our goal here is really for this to be a forum to ask questions of each other collectively and to think out loud. I would love if you walked away with more questions and answers and perhaps some new connections to talk those out with. So we're going to start off with about a 30-minute conversation that I'm going to moderate, and then that will be followed by 30 minutes of community dialogue and conversation with you all. Mary Liz Murray is going to be moderating that community conversation. We would love to literally include your voices there, so if you'd like to speak and ask your question, please let her know. Please use the Q&A function and as well as the chat room function to introduce yourself and talk to each other. So I'll introduce our guests a little bit more thoroughly. Stephanie is an artist from France in the United States. She's based here in Boston. Her work combines and contrasts materials and colors that commonly belong to the realm of construction and infrastructure. Currently, her work is preoccupied with the emotional and social impact of ecological loss and climate change. I'm really excited to have Stephanie here. She and I have been in conversation with each other on and off for the past, I guess, almost 10 years since we were editors at Bigger and Shiny together. So it's exciting to have her here. And Charla is, as I mentioned, the founder and CEO of U2B Nourishing Skincare. Her passion is illuminating the necessity of beauty and wellness in our lives, starting with how we care for our skin. She is also a great champion of art for art here in Boston and beyond, who we first met through Elisa Hamilton's slideshow a couple of years ago, I guess in 2017. Time flies. So we brought these two together because they're both deeply engaged with the idea of hope in their respective work. Hope and art is something that we think and talk a lot about it Now and There in times of crisis or not. We see art making as incredibly hopeful, and it's an act that can be instrumental in creating togetherness and ultimately a more equitable world for all of us. So as has been our practice over these last few sessions, I'll start by asking Stephanie and Charla just to share where they are physically today. So maybe Stephanie, I'll start with you.
Oh, that was the question. I am in my studio, which happens to be at home. It's on the 3rd floor of a house in Roslindale. And I'm also very much in my stomach right now. There are a lot of butterflies. It feels like a big topic to tackle, although it's, I think, a wonderful conversation to have. So I'm delighted to be here.
I am in my office, which is just packed full of art and books and stuff. So I'm trying to manage all the things in the background so it doesn't get too crowded. But like Stephanie, I'm honored to be invited to this conversation. It's a very important one for us to have. Yeah.
Great. We're so excited to have you both with us.
Thank
I'm
you.
here in my dining room / center of my world right now in Fort Point. Oops.
You're still here.
I'm still here. Okay, that's good. One never knows. So we thought this week that we might do something a little bit differently and start off by asking actually our audience a question that we'll return to in the community dialogue. So I'll pose it to everyone. We're wondering how you define hope. Hope is a really personal and individual thing and a word that gets thrown around a lot. So we're wondering if you could just take a couple seconds here to write down your reflections on what hope means to you. And we'll ask you guys to offer those in our community session.
Stephanie, when you can go first.
Spoiler, I'm going to ask the same question of Stephanie and Charla. So yeah, Stephanie, maybe you could go ahead and get us started there.
I see a lightness of spirit. Oh my goodness, I see names I know. Hi, everyone. Hope. Yeah, so I do think about it that way, but not always using that word. I think that hope is fundamentally future focused, right? This has to do with an expected outcome or a desired outcome, and something we might put our energy towards. Hopefully that's, here we go. We use it so effortlessly. It's constantly peppering our language, right? But I do think talking about the future in the context of hope is important in this moment when the future is so uncertain. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've been grappling with, not just in this particular moment of social distancing and contagion and loss, a lot of grief and loss. Mm-hmm. But it's something that I have been thinking about for some years because of my work around climate change. And increasingly, my work has actually dealt with what is possibly the reverse of hope, which is grief. Mm-hmm. And trying to make space to acknowledge the loss that's happening. Because I think that unless we take time to grieve, it's hard to find the strength mm-hmm. to keep working towards that vision. Mm-hmm. So that's something. I think the uncertainty of the moment is really important. I think that the comparisons are not lost on me. There are many comparisons being made right now between this current challenge and a climate, a warming future. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll pause there for now.
Yeah. And Charla, what about you?
Well, I think, Stephanie, you've said a couple things that make me think about the fact, well, to me, hope, it's a small word for a very big human engagement. And it is and no wonder it's always kind of, slipping into our language and our ideas, especially in this moment where, I think I feel so much grief and loss and fear right now. Mm-hmm. And the best thing, though, that I in hope is that means to that engagement, to stay in the moment, but also push through the moment. The best thing I ever heard about hope came from Barack Obama's keynote speech in 2004. And I think he laid it out in such a magnificent way. He talked, because part of what he talked about was the connectedness of all of us, mm-hmm. and the ancient idea of how one of many, out of many is one, something like that. That Latin phrase. There's a Latin phrase that he threw out that I thought was very powerful. But the most powerful thing was his reminding us about the hope of slaves singing around the campfire, singing slave songs around a campfire. And, for some, I am passionate about the arts, and it's like there's an art form right there, and really mm-hmm. understanding the role of art in these dire moments and circumstances, as well as the role of art as a tool to mm-hmm. navigate uncertainty and, these, and grief and fear and all of that. And I don't know, if you're in Boston, we get to go down to the Prudential Center and be in this cathedral of your work, which is so, wonderful right now. And that talked to something we'll probably get to a little bit later, but it made me think, you know, I was thinking about this conversation. It made me think about, you know, we know about artists who use nature and nature and conservation and sustainability and climate change are so important to you. We know about artists, you know, Robert Smithson and Robert Goldsworthy, you know, they make art from the earth, from the thing that we care about, the thing that gives us comfort during these times. And I wanted to hear your thoughts about that, because, you know, the things that give you comfort, as well as the fact that you're making work from the things that are in our everydayness, and you're bringing awareness, you're connecting us in a different way through art and through your art making about earth and that. So it's kind of interesting. It's very fascinating to me.
Yeah. Are you asking me why I use plastics?
Well, it's really hopeful that you're giving, like, specifically the N+T piece from 2018, like that's, you gave a new life to that orange construction netting that became really a beacon in the lobby there. I mean, will you talk a little bit about how you see maybe like active into that?
Yeah. So there are so many thoughts right now, and I feel like in our previous conversation this week, I certainly went all over the place. So bear with me. But there's a few things that I've noticed first about this moment that I want to bring up, and that has to do with our relationship to other species and what we call the natural world, right? Which we are fundamentally a part of as animals. But and that is the amount of hope and solace that people are finding in spring, right? In the renewal of this season that it brings, in watching flowers and buds and birds, and enjoying the silence that is afforded from the lack of flights that are taking off. So I seem to be, myself and others, really finding some grounding in that space of nature, of other species, right? And the inverse of that feeds into my vision of hope for us all is that we spend some time acknowledging the amount of strength it's giving us, and also how absolutely terrifying it would be to lose it, right? Which is what we're headed towards. So my hope is that in our future visioning, that we might spend time, contemplating more right now, sitting with in silence, meditating upon. My hope is that we acknowledge just how fundamental it is to us, and therefore, in our active hope, in our work as individuals, we start tending to it. So that's one thing. Then my work, my work has not been using natural materials. So why is that? Well, for one thing, I'm particularly interested in the narratives that come with materials themselves. So when I choose something like construction debris netting, which is what I used for N+, and I collected it from building sites. Well, it was partly because I was thinking about the carbon emissions that are coming out of building. I was thinking about the site that it was going up in and urban development. So I wanted a material that sort of matched the subject matter, carbon emissions, fossil fuels. I also wanted to give new life to something that was headed for a landfill. And then I wanted a material that had certain properties, certain formal properties, certain colors. So the orange is neon. It's used on construction sites to put up barriers to indicate that you're at the edge, right? That you might fall off a floor. It's really there for the safety of the people working on that site, and for the people walking by it. And so I wanted this high alert orange and I wanted it to envelop the entire building. So there was that narrative that came with the material. And then there was the fact that by patching it all together and covering the entire glass, it made it look like the site was under a renovation or construction. And that was a nod to the future to come, right? So the idea of the possible repairs that Boston is going to face again and again as we get hit. So it was somewhere between a poetic choice of gesture, something uplifting, you know, maybe akin to a rose window in a cathedral, maybe, you know, there were many, many different strands to it. But there were all these other narratives that came with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in general in the work, because I make other pieces using these materials,
Mm-hmm.
I think it has something to do with the fact that they're humble, the fact that they're not associated with art, the fact that they force me to learn certain techniques like pouring concrete, like mending. You know, there's something in the acquisition of skills, practical skills, that's interesting to me in this moment, as I'm learning to make do, so to speak.
I was just going to say, that seems very hopeful.
Yeah, make do. And so a lot of my work seems to be a sort of, it's like a weird prepper thing in a way, right? It's not really, but because the objects are completely fictional. But there is something of the practicing and of the envisioning through making, envisioning a possible future, imagining a narrative, and holding that, which is often, it's a form of grieving, I suppose, a form of envisioning and grieving and holding it within me. So yeah, all those things are part of the work.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Charla, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to maybe ask you to, I mean, I'm just thinking about, in light of your comments, Stephanie, and then Charla, your reference to this idea of slaves who are, you know, kidnapped and brought to this country and didn't know each other and didn't maybe necessarily even share a language or common experience, and yet found a sense of community and togetherness through song. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you see art as a tool for hope or togetherness.
Yeah, you know, it's so, there's something very mystical and soul enforcing to have reverence for something that we don't understand. And artists spend so much time thinking about these things. And some of the things that you just said, Stephanie, I love, because these are the kinds of practices, not all of us are artists, but some of the practices are ones that we could all benefit from. Mm-hmm. In this moment that we're in, we have an opportunity to stop, to pause and consider, like, this moment, to feel and to feel our grief and the things that we're feeling right now, which are big and it's not insignificant. And what do artists do when they come up against a question that they don't know or understand? They interrogate, they seek out, they go deeper. And I think that that's such an important thing for us to have in our lives. And that's why I think public art is so important, because, you know, we can't get into museums right now, you know, and we're certainly getting a big dose of virtual experiences of those places. But I think, you know, there's a very different neuropathic response to being in presence to a work. And right now you can be in presence to your work, you know, as I mentioned, to Nick Cave's work, you know, Joy, down in Upman Square here in Boston. And you know, I think that's really important, because, you know, art is a vehicle that reminds us that, you know, this word hope that we use is, no, let me back up and say this. I think that hope is a contact sport. Mm-hmm. I think that it's one where we're all on a team, you know, we're all, and I don't like to use that sports metaphor, but, you know, being in Boston, it works.
It works, yeah.
But, you know, the fact that, you know, this idea of, like, engagement together is so critical to hope. And, you know, when you're bringing up I know, we talk about slaves and we think about them as this homogenous thing, and they weren't. They were coming from a continent that you can fit the United States in 4 times. It's huge, and the cultures inside just one of those countries is amazing, and that's always been the case. So, just imagine that, coming together and finding an art form that is universal. And I just think that's I have such reverence for that, because and it calms, it gives me comfort to know that these tools are there and they're available, and there are artists who are engaging in this evidence of our connectedness and this evidence of our how we live our interior life, and validating that and showing that, giving voice to that. I think it's great. Yeah. So
thanks, Charlotte. And Stephanie, is there anything you want to add there?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I agree. I agree that this collective engagement is essential. I'm also hoping that what we can get perhaps from folks who are joining us today is a sense of the individual commitment that it's going to take as well. Because I do think that visions of hope are often offered to us by leaders, right? And those are essential. Those are absolutely important. Greta Thunberg, who I follow closely, it's interesting to watch the history of her speeches and how they've changed. And a couple of years ago, she was so angry, and she's still justifiably angry, as we all should be, but it's been interesting that she went from anger to now talking about where she finds hope. And she does find hope in people and in this massive movement that has grown behind her. Although she wouldn't position herself that way, I do think that's probably what's giving her hope right now, is realizing that she's not sitting alone anymore. But I do think that this individual commitment is absolutely essential to understanding exactly what's at stake and what role we're going to play in moving forward a collective vision. So,
and isn't it amazing right now in this moment where, this moment is taking us beyond our imagination about what life could be for us here in the United States, who we never thought that we would ever just go to the grocery stores and not be able to just pick up whatever we wanted, or that we would not be able to have the freedom of movement in, in our society, in our spaces.
Yeah. So,
sorry to jump in like that, but when you're talking about, these things that we take for granted, I think we have to sit with this in this moment, which is, this is the opportunity. What are the things we take for granted? Like, we take our bodies for granted. We take we take air for granted. We take all these things for
sometimes.
Yeah. And then look at what happens when that, when we do. And we've known about climate change for a long time. And, it's like, if we could just, sort of take in the reality of what it means to run your own story in the face of evidence, to run your own story in the face of science and reality. Like, there's a cost to that, and we're paying we're living a cost, that none of us had expected. And this is exactly the discussion. This is exactly the concern with the planet, with climate change, with the earth. And it's all these little, the little individual things that happen, but they all add up to this one thing. Just as we all need to mask up, we all need to do certain practices. We all need to do our best to stay home. And it adds up to our being safe. That
Yeah,
like
you're
that.
talking
That's,
about, it sounds like you're describing the interconnectedness of our
yeah.
responsibility, right?
Well,
And
that's yeah. I mean, I think hope works that way. I mean, I don't think that hope is this thing that you can have on your own.
Mhm.
It's a thing that is, it is available to all of it. It is in all of us, but it takes an active participation. It takes an active role on the part of the individual to really have the depth of what hope is about.
I think it takes, I mean, on that note, I think it takes a consciousness, right? And I think, part of what's making me really hopeful in this moment is that people are, at least I'm feeling like I'm seeing people being really aware of how their individual actions in their own place can impact the globe and impact everyone who inhabits this globe with us. And I think, coming back to art, I think that's also what makes how I see hope in art. I think, and to be able to go into, to see a piece of public art, to see, Nick Cave's piece up at Upland's Corner now, it really makes me feel like I'm part of a continuum of expression and articulation and of culture that's far beyond me and will continue on after me. So I think, I guess maybe my last question before we open it up to our audience will be how you guys think about the role of artists expanding at this time. And maybe Stephanie, you could start there.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit before, but I always get a little bit wary, both myself, being this mouthpiece right now, and just artists in general, feeling like there's some kind of responsibility for artists to lead, right? When I'm sure many artists are grieving or struggling. And I guess I would broaden art to all of us. This might sound, that might sound trite in a way that, but I do think that there's something about broadening perhaps our definition of art as a form of interruption of time, a form of pausing, considering, staying curious to things, having visions, interrupting time. Yeah, that's, and I do think it's something that everybody has the capacity to do. I mean, it's been really quite fascinating watching how people are responding to confinement and how for lack of a better word, creative it makes folks. How people have found moments of lightness and togetherness and taught themselves skills they never considered teaching themselves before. I mean, for me, it's been bread baking. But I think that it all comes, I don't think there's a single way to respond to that because for myself, I'm a mother of 2 young kids, and right now art making is
love their art in the background.
It's challenging. Yeah, right. They're making art and I'm cleaning messes up. So I do think a lot about the practices of artists who've been much more either dematerialized or focused on humble and art as caregiver, caretaker, mender, which are all valid things, right? But I'm trying.
Yeah, Charla,
okay, so I'm the only person on the call or the panel who's not an artist. I think
I'm not an artist either.
But you're a curator. I was going to say, I'm not a curator, I'm not an artist, but I have very deep respect and appreciation and for both. And I don't think that artists need, personally, my feeling is, artists, I've met lots of artists, they don't need me to tell them or instruct them like what I want to see. Like that's really not a purview that, but it's up to me to find the work that that I need. I think artists are great at, because this is what it is to be an artist, is like grappling with these questions and delving into this idea, you know, like creativity and beauty and like these big things that we have trouble with. I mean, that's the tool that they so generously gift us with. So as someone who is not an artist or a curator, I think there is an enormous opportunity for the rest of us to think about the role of art in our lives and how it's played a role in our lives, whether it's through music, whether it's through performance, whether it's through, you know, walking by a piece of work like Nick Cave's, you know, I love the building rep, you know, or, you know, a visual work, whatever it is. And we have a role to play in finding where we can be generous and finding where we can support artists and support the institutions and the organizations that make it accessible to us. And I think this is a big question, how we're going to do that, but I have faith that it will be answered. So there you have it, faith and hope.
Thank you. Maybe this is a good time to go to some personal definitions of hope from the audience. If Mary Liz, you want to cue some up for us?
Oh, yeah, we have a bunch in here. Let me see.
I'm seeing them pop up. I can't wait to read them all.
Yes, a lot of them are much further up in the comments. I didn't know I was going to have to read them. Leah, maybe you can scroll through and I'll ask a question and then you can share a few with us.
Sure. I mean, from Carolyn Mills says that hope is looking forward to the future with optimism. And Raquel Jimenez says it involves a sense of imagination, the ability to see new possibilities. I like that one. And desired futures coupled with the sense that we can make it happen.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That is a good one. So if anyone has any questions that you would like to ask, you can send them directly through the Q&A feature. And when I get your question, I'll cue you up and turn your mic on so that you can ask, because we would love to add your voices to the conversation. One question that came up for me while people think through what they'd like to ask is there was some conversation and the word comfort came up. And I'm interested to hear, Charla, maybe you can start what you feel like the difference is right now between comfort and hope. And how those things are differentiating in your experience of what's going on. And Stephanie, I'd love to hear your answers too, but I'm just going to throw that one to Charla first.
Yeah, wow, that's a big question. I think, you know, we're getting to explore things, you know, that we have gotten attached to or we feel like we need in order to feel comforted or be comforted, and we're having to live without the people, you know, in the physical context that comfort us. And and I think that's, you know, in the absence of being able to be comforted, like by all the things that I really, you know, that, you know, I have a routine in the world that I like to do that kind of, you know, gives me a sense of comfort and control. And that's where, you know, I feel like I do it's like, oh, I have to do this heavier work of like engaging and stepping up to do a part of exercising a practice of hope, which is exercising our imagination, exercising, pausing, like a pause to see, a pause to just be in this moment. You know, we're not going to escape this moment. And as much as we can't comfort ourselves out of this moment. And the only way to get to comfort is to really go deep into this moment and just really interrogate our experiences, our sense of lacking things. And from that interrogation, I think hope comes. I think hope, you know, reveals itself. And I don't know how that works. I don't know you know, how that works explicitly. But I don't know, and I hope I answered your question, but I don't know, Stephanie, do you, because, you know, I think of artists as always, you know, making those differentiations, which are so important.
I would not say that making art is comfortable in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. And I'm one of these artists who's constantly shifting media. I almost seek out discomfort on purpose, it seems to me, in a sort of masochistic way, like trying out new forms and materials and seeing if they'll work. Like embroidering on debris netting. That was crazy. So I do think that I do think that this is an uncomfortable topic to discuss because the future, as this moment is showing us, is not a comfortable place. I don't think it's a comfortable place emotionally, and it's certainly not going to be a comfortable place physically. I think that anyone following climate science is seeing that the world is getting hotter. It's going to impact people more and more, and we're seeing right now the inequitable impacts on health.
Yes.
And that is something that is, I think it's pretty safe to imagine, is going to get worse and worse. And so I think when we talk about hope and comfort, you know, I come back to this climate scientist Kate Marvell, who says we need courage, not hope.
Yeah.
I do think that we're going to need a significant amount of courage. And it's, you know, when I start getting into this topic, I start to get a little choked up because I do think that the definitions that we've had that have carried us forward and have enabled us to build the world we're living in now are falling apart pretty swiftly. And I agree with you, Charla, that comfort is not going to be
no.
what it
comfort
was.
Comfort is the low-hanging fruit that we've all just kind of like, gone for. And this moment is teaching us that if we want to live, you know, we need to go for something different, and we have to break barriers with our comfort.
Yes.
And use other tools.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think actually sobriety is probably a better word than, or not a better word, but to think about comfort with sobriety, I suppose, because I have a favorite Rumi poem that is sit, be still, and listen, because you are drunk and we're at the edge of the roof, right? And that image of sobriety, sobriety is what might, it's not going to stop us from falling off the roof, but it might slow us down a little bit, or help us be a little bit more mindful in how we descend.
I feel like we've gone full circle, because it's back to that you mentioned, pause. It's so important. You know, it's so important.
Yeah, and I appreciate the nod to the need for discomfort as well, because that was a
we
have a great question here for Stephanie from Sophie Tuttle. So I'm going to turn Sophie's mic on. Sophie, you're all set to ask your question.
Hi. Hi, Stephanie. I am also a local artist in Boston, and a lot of my work has been gravitating much more towards eco-grief and mourning, and kind of like sitting with those ideas and realizing that we don't have rituals in place for those kinds of things. And so my work has been kind of trying to figure out what kinds of collective rituals that we can create for this new uncharted territory that we're in. And I heard you talking a little bit about grief and sadness, and I found that this work, like, people have been kind of slow to engage, I would say. It scares people, it turns them off, they don't want to think about it. So I'm wondering if you've run into that, and if you have any kind of thoughts or advice about how to get people engaged in their grief.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that, Sophie. And I think I would love to talk more together. I actually did my first, I led a grief circle in the context of Sam Fields's piece, Desires Not Even Our Own, which was also a Now and There supported
Accelerator project.
Yep. And it was scary. It was really scary. I was surprised that 14 people came and were ready to engage with this. It was really hard. You know, people came for different reasons. They weren't just grieving ecological devastation and loss. So some were coming because they were grieving very concrete things, like a loss of a loved one, or a loss of a lifestyle, or you know, sort of cultural loss felt over generations. It was extremely profound, and I felt very honored to be sort of the catalyst for it. I would say that people will come when they're ready, and you can't, unfortunately, because when you're in the work, you wish more people would make the leap. Mm-hmm. You really do, because you feel like there's an urgency, and so I feel that. I also think you can't force people to grieve when they're not ready, because it is such a genuine emotion. It has to come from a place of having felt loss, and I don't know how that helps you, but I would love to keep talking about it.
That just underscores the importance to me for artists to keep asking questions like that, and to keep involved in that work, to create opportunities for people to come when they're ready.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sophie. So if anyone else has any other questions on hope or grief, you can send them in through the Q&A. I think I'm interested, so I have a poll question set up that everyone can answer that I'm going to launch in just a second. And this is just a multiple choice, like click, just another way to get involved here while you think on your questions. And I have another question here from Fred Moon. So I'm going to open up Fred's mic in just a second. Okay, Fred, you should be able to answer your question now.
Okay.
Hi, Fred.
Hi, am I, let's see, there's no video, so it's just a blank for me. I'm very drawn to this notion, Steph, of the pause, and what we do with the pause, and the level of uncertainty that kind of surrounds in that moment. And you know, because to me, nature is perfect, and in a way, the virus is perfect. And we're at a juncture where we can reset, where we get to move forward. And one of the things that I think that we have learned is, you know, our definition of what is essential, you know, has been wrong. You know, if we asked, you know, 2 months ago what professions are essential or who is essential, we would have had one answer. And now, you know, we look at the people that, you know, shop for us, the people that drive for us, the farmers, you know, all these people that have kind of been forgotten are suddenly essential. And to me, there's a kind of focus on the non-exceptional. You know, so much of, you know, our political leadership, you know, we like to think of ourselves as exceptional, but out of this sort of pause, out of this quiet, I think we need to, you know, think more holistically. You know, nature is perfect. We are part of a process. We are not exceptional. We're one of many species. And so I loved what you talked about, you know, in terms of your material choice for your art piece downtown, you know, that you picked the most ordinary, you know, and so I think, you know, ways in which ritual and reflection can have us, you know, just not feel smart, you know, they're just levels of agency of things that we can can and will do. But part of it is, being more modest about what we humans are, and accepting of our responsibility for what the situation that we've created. So that's not, it's more of a comment, I realize, than a question, but it's triggered by what I've heard from you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, I'll only say one thing, is that something that has slowed me down. I'm not a prolific maker. I often envy people who are prolific makers. But I am slow because partly I need to consider that the gestures I'm making are not harming too much. And I do think that this is a time when pausing before we do something and thinking about how it connects. This goes back to what you were saying, Charla, earlier about the interconnectedness of our responsibilities. And pausing before we do something, before we make a choice or engage, might be wise, going forward as a sort of a reminder or navigational tool.
Yeah. If you've ever watched an art installation, or just listen to an artist like yourself, Stephanie, talk about art making, there is a lot of pause. It's not like you sit down and create a concept and then go, okay, let's make it happen. There's so much pause in it. There's so much consideration in it. And, as Fred said, nature may be perfect, but we too are part of nature. And if there's anything we can learn in this process, I think it's about really sort of standing still, like really learning the gift of just being still and opening, just opening and being still, and then allow that experience to happen and unfold, so that we can then figure out, like, apply something, think about it, but reconsider our beliefs, reconsider our actions, think about the implications of our beliefs and our actions. I see, like the piece going up, every step of the way, you have to reset your intentions, and it affects your intent, and that's this moment that we're in, is a resetting of all of that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That actually leads into the second poll question I'm going to launch, but people have really shared some great information on how they're finding hope, which sound a lot like the ways that you all have talked about finding hope. Right now, the number one way people are doing it is by safely getting outside and getting into nature, I think, which has a lot to do with the season. But second is by making. And not necessarily art, but by being active and putting your hands to something. And
yes.
It brings up the question for me in terms of how creating is an act of hope, and how, even though it can be uncomfortable to create, how it itself, creating something, is a hopeful thing. So Alana Nelson has another question for us, and so I am going to open up your mic, Alana. If you have someone that you'd like to ask this question of first, that would be great to direct it when you get on the line. And you should be all set to ask.
Great. Thank you, Mary Liz. I have a feeling one of the two of you might be ready to answer this first, but I'm open to either, because there's going to be discomfort in this pause that we're advocating. And in our culture, we avoid discomfort. So how do we encourage people to face and work through this?
Charla, would you like to go first?
I think about this a lot because, part of the work that my work is about, part of my work is about how to be comfortable in the skin you live in, how to be in your body. And, the skin is the first line of defense. And so I think about this a great deal. And the biggest thing is really taking apart these concepts that we've been given about the importance of being comfortable, about the importance of control, the importance of these things that just really are not factual. And they're just simply not factual. We're addicted to them. We want them. They're in our lives. And we move so fast that we rarely have the chance. It's such an intentional act to even have the chance to stop and think about, like, wait, whoa, how do I add more pause into my world? And sometimes it takes asking that question every single day and not achieving the answer, not being, as Einstein said, the power is in the question. And so, forget about being so driven towards getting there and productivity and the answer. It really, there's such an incredible power with reining in, harnessing in, and just really listening to, really seriously listening to what comes up, oh, wow, I'm uncomfortable. What does that mean? Just befriending yourself. And we all have to do that to get through these moments, whether it's a diagnosis of something or it's a, these are the tools that are so necessary for our lives. And we have really gotten away from those basics, I think. Mm-hmm. One of the things I love about artists are they're always forcing those difficulties, on themselves, on their work. Really good artists are doing that. They're not just drawing pretty pictures and making nice things that make us feel great. Mm-hmm. They are really doing things that, once and the beautiful thing about it is, Stephanie, you create work like your neon orange, which I totally get intellectually. And when I experience that work, I'm like, oh, it's so, creativity, orange, the color creativity, and it is, and it's so, yeah, it's, it isn't, and that's so interesting, is that we have to learn to trust that there's something will meet us when we step into that realm of discomfort and and uncertainty. Something will meet us, and it'll be okay, Mm-hmm. So, I know where the materials came from, and they're perfect for the ideology that you have, your attention behind them when I got it. But I can't help but just feel like,
Well, good. I'm glad.
I feel the severity of it. Mm-hmm. That's part of the path, but mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I hope I answered the question, Mary.
Yeah. Should I add something? I don't. That was really good, Charla. Yeah. How do you encourage people to be uncomfortable? Oh, yikes.
We're just aren't we uncomfortable for for great pieces of any day? I'm uncomfortable with something.
Yeah. I made a work about it. About it. Daring to blush, because I'm a terrible blusher, and it comes back to courage. But I feel my discomfort on my skin very much, and it's super visible too, which is hard. But I have always felt like that's my growing edge. So if I can push up against that, then it's actually kind of a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you don't, it's we don't learn sometimes so easily. When you have something about you that 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 makes you understand that there's a need for agency. There's a need to tend to it, because otherwise you lose control of it. And skin is one of those canvases. It tells us a lot about the individual. And it also, we have all these myths and ideas, many of them false, about that canvas. And that's the thing, we have like these myths about comfort, like what we have, these ideas about what it means to be comfortable, and it's overrated, I think, in some respects. There's some settling in to peace, and settling in to just that, it's not that I'm not being an advocate for discomfort. I'm just saying that discomfort is not the end of the story. I'm just saying that comfort, like many things that are highly desirable, they take work. They take a little bit of something on our part. And if it's really easy, it's probably going to be fleeting. The kind of comfort that we need is the kind of comfort that we have to settle into.
I'm just seeing Juan Omar Rodriguez's comment in the chat, and just want to bring up this idea about vulnerability. And I think for me, like when I see an artist being truly vulnerable, like Stephanie, maybe you were, but when Sam's piece in the Grief Circle, like that's just, so I know we're confusing terms a little bit, or I'm confusing terms, but that's so encouraging and really hopeful to me, that people are willing to step outside of themselves and their comfort to share something else that they might not know the answer to, they might not be an expert in, they don't have kind of like the comfort of validation. And I think we really lose sight of the importance of being vulnerable in this conversation.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And that's why it's so nerve-wracking to be leading or part of a conversation like this. It seems like, who am I to tell anybody what to hope for? But
you're a human being, and you're
right, exactly. And I mean, vulnerability, I think, is incredibly powerful. I think that so much of our society is built around the notion of expertise and training, and really that is another thing that is grossly overrated. I mean, certainly in some ways of measuring it, that is. I do, yeah. I don't have much to add to what you said, Leah, but I do think bringing up vulnerability is key.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You can go ahead, Charla, with your last
I
thought.
was just going to say, Stephanie, what you made me think of takes me back to my comments about Barack Obama's hope speech, and him talking about, because I remember where I was, what I was doing, and when he just gave that phrase, about slaves singing around a fire pit, singing freedom songs. I burst into tears, like literally burst into tears. And where I was going with this is that, wait, I forgot, sorry. The call and response is so dynamic in spirituals, or even in any kind of music. The vulnerability of adding your voice, the vulnerability of being a participant, and we think, oh God, they have a way better voice than I do, or they make better art than I do. Those are false barriers when it comes to things like hope and truth. Science is very important. We need to, science is as evidence-based as is, hope. I mean, there's evidence of hope. There's in art. But I was just when you said that, it made me think about the fact that everyone gets to participate in it. And yeah, you know, like the point is not perfection. The point is not, you know, the point is participation. The point is, you know, being additive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm going to share one last quote from the comments section and then turn it over to Leah to wrap it up. And Tran Vu shared this quote from Brene Brown, who I like a lot and is a person who talks a lot about hope. But we will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return. And I think that, you know, speaks to everything that we've talked about. We have an opportunity to shape a new kind of normal over time together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I would say we all have to be cautious, though, not to let ourselves get pulled in, as all the mechanisms that we've built will attempt to make us, you know, re-engage with the way things were. Yeah. So it's an act of resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good place.
Thank you
good
so
place to-
much.
Thank
Leah.
you. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you everyone who added your definitions of hope and questions and prompts. I saw so much in the chat. I just want to say that I want to thank both Stephanie and Charla, as well as Neva's Fund for the Arts and the Boston Foundation for supporting this program and their ongoing support now and there. We're going to drop a survey in the chat. We'd love your feedback on how to make these sessions better. Anything that we can do to improve them is always good. And I also hope that you'll join me again next week. It's going to be me again on Friday, May 1st, as we talk about how can, if today's crisis can spark cultural equity. So hopefully I'll see you all at the same time, same place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm looking at everything now.
It's so tempting.